Leading health experts agree public drinking water in the United States is some of the cleanest, safest you'll find anywhere in the world. But scientists are learning new things about the chemicals that are added to our water to kill bacteria.
3 major water providers in the upstate use a combination of chemicals that is growing in controversy. Some people believe it's making them sick, and leading researchers say it could have long-term consequences that we don't even realize. Are we running a risk by running our tap water? 7 on your side's community watchdog Chris Cato has more.
Inside this home in Greer,
okay, what are some benefits of science?
Michelle Anderson is helping her son study the scientific method, which always starts with a problem.
So you establish a problem, you form a hypothesis.
It's something she's qualified to teach. 6 years ago, after moving to Greer, Michelle found herself trying to solve her own problem.
I started getting severe stomach cramps, and my son was also getting them at the same time. So I went to the doctor and had him check me out thoroughly. He couldn't find anything wrong.
She says she later developed a painful rash on her forehead that would flare up when she took a shower.
It started feeling like it was being burned with acid.
Michelle developed her own hypothesis after stumbling across a website about something called chloramine.
And at chloramine.org, I saw that other people were having symptoms. I started reading through the list, and I thought, that's me, that's me, that's me.
But what is chloramine? Many of you drink it every day. Most water providers in the United States use chlorine to kill harmful bacteria, but about 20% of them add ammonia to the chlorine, creating a disinfectant called chloramine.
I was shocked when I found out that that's what was in my water. I was absolutely shocked.
3 public utilities in the upstate use chloramine. Greer CPW, which serves 17,000 customers, Greenwood CPW, 42,000 customers, and Greenville Water System, serving 450,000 people, not only in Greenville County, but also in parts of Pickens, Anderson, and Lawrence counties. Greenville water officials say the sheer size of their system is the reason they prefer chloramine over chlorine.
Chlorine is a very powerful disinfectant, but it tends to dissipate. The levels of chlorine can drop very quickly after it's done some of its disinfecting work. We like the long-lasting protection that chloramines afford us in the distribution system.
These are injection points on the opposite side. You've got these pipes coming down and going in.
Greenville has used chloramine since 1933. Eskridge says he's never heard of anyone complain of health problems. Michelle says that's because people attribute their symptoms to something else.
Very few people know that it's in the water.
The Environmental Protection Agency recognizes that some people may be sensitive to chloramine, but says there is a lack of research on how it affects human health. After doing her own research, Michelle stopped drinking her water and says her digestive problems disappeared almost immediately.
It was amazing. It was total difference. I felt like I was human again. Who would suspect the water?
Dr. Michael Pleva would. He's a researcher at the University of Illinois, his latest work focusing on the toxicity of drinking water. He says chloramine may pose a far greater health risk than stomach aches and rashes.
You're generating these chemical contaminants that can have unforeseen toxic consequences.
When chloramine reacts with natural organic matter in water, it creates a byproduct called nitrosodimethylamine, or NDMA. NDMA is classified as a probable human carcinogen after causing liver cancer in lab animals. Greenville Water System's latest water quality report, mailed to all customers, shows their water does contain NDMA. It measured 0.0034 parts per billion. Customers have no idea if that's high or low because EPA doesn't regulate it, meaning the agency has not established a limit for how much of the chemical you can have in your water. Dr. Pleva believes they should.
In this case, more research is really needed to protect the public health.
Adding to the questions is the state of Tennessee's stance on chloramine. It requires water providers to have free chlorine throughout their systems. The manager of Tennessee's Water Supply Division says that's because chlorine is better at killing bacteria, and he says there's just too much unknown about chloramine.
Some of the unregulated byproducts that they form, you know, the result of those byproducts on human health is not really well understood at this point.
Should that be of concern to your almost 500,000 customers, that there's an entire state that doesn't use this stuff because their leaders aren't comfortable with it?
I don't think so. We've been successfully using this since 1933. So while they may not have a history with this particular type of water disinfectant, we do. And we've been using this very carefully for a very long time.
He says Greenville will continue using chloramine because they believe it produces the highest quality, safest drinking water. Greer, however, is considering a switch, but not because of NDMA, because of the concerns voiced by Michelle Anderson and a few other customers who blame chloramine for stomach cramps, acid reflux, rashes, and irritated eyes. General Manager Nick Stiegel says his staff visited a plant in Tennessee to see how they do it without chloramine.
I think it's performed well for us. Can something be developed in the future that performs better? Certainly it can.
Michelle says she's glad to see Greer is at least looking at other options. In the meantime, though, she continues to go out of her way to avoid Greer's water, even in the shower.
I use Spartanburg water. I heat it up so that it's not so cold, and I stand there and pour the water over my head.
Observation, like observing something.
An experiment, as her son is learning, is part of the scientific method of finding a solution to a problem. Researchers say, to some degree, people are participating in an experiment every time they turn on their tap. Now, the EPA declined our repeated request for interviews, both on camera and over the phone. The agency would only answer questions in writing. Our main question was, given the toxicity of the chloramine byproduct NDMA, why doesn't EPA set a limit for it like it does for byproducts of chlorine, which are less toxic than NDMA? EPA responded by saying it has put NDMA on a watch list for further study, which is why Greenville Water and other large systems were required to test for it in 2010. EPA will use that data and other available health information to determine whether or not to set a drinking water standard. That decision, though, may not come until 2016. To read our full Q&A with EPA, go to WSPA.com. Back to you, Tom.
All right, Chris, thanks for that. To find out if your water provider uses chloramine, simply look at the water quality report they send to you every year, like this one from Greer. Many of these are online as well. It's important to note conventional water filters do not remove chloramine.